Good day, my name is Theo and I am at the Northwest Business School. We've decided to make another YouTube recording on especially the economic matters of the day. It's September 2019. We've just passed Mr. Ramaphosa's 100 days of being in power, the 6th Parliament. We had several developments in the same time, such as xenophobic attacks. There was this gender outburst and outcry about what goes on in the country. We're stuck in a low growth kind of environment. So obviously, to discuss this and more, we've invited Professor Raymond Parsons. Raymond, you are the go-to guy at the business school when it gets to economics, especially the macroeconomic situation and how the history has developed. South Africa, to me, it feels, is at a cutting edge and a cutting point. Actually, one of those points that I looked in history, and it seems to me the most comparable situation would be 1986 after the Rubicon speech, where South Africa was confronted with not being able to pay its bills, where our accounts were closed in America and those places, and we had to develop some way out of it. Maybe I'm over-exaggerating, but looking at some kind of comparative situation. Would you agree with that?
Hi, Theo. Well, I think I agree to the extent that then as now, we're anxious to create a bigger, stronger and better economy to serve the wider interests of the nation. And I think the phrase we're at a crossroad is not quite appropriate. We're at a T-junction. We're either going to go onto a high road towards certain solutions, or we're going to stay on a low road, which I define as really trying to break out of a low growth trap without ending up in a debt trap. That's where we are now. And so this latest plan from the National Treasury in this dark cloud that we are facing in South Africa, it's the silver lining if we can implement it, because what it's saying to us and what it's building on is something which we knew in 1986 and which we now have rediscovered in 2019, that if you want to make economic progress, you need inclusive growth, you need high growth, you need to break out of a 0.5% growth rate into something much, much better. Secondly, you need economic transformation. You want to give many more people a stake in the economy to uphold and defend. And thirdly, you have to be competitive. There's a big competitive world out there. And if we want to get a bigger share of world trade and world investment, we've got to get our house in order. And that is really what the National Treasury plan is now promising. It's building on the foundations of our National Development Plan, and it wants to take us forward on that basis.
Yeah, of course you're referring to the document that was released about 2 weeks ago. And what you're now saying is so aptly described in the first sentence of that document. And let me just read that. It says, South Africa's economic trajectory is unsustainable. So it starts in a very dramatic way. Then says, economic growth has stagnated, unemployment is rising, inequality remains high. So what they're describing is a very, very urgent situation. Now, in that urgent situation, my concern about this plan, which you correctly said is built on the National Development Plan, two things. The one is process is sometimes more important than product in politics. In other words, how you produce the document, how you get it through the ranks, where you get approval, etc., etc. It's sometimes the killing grounds of such a policy. And the second thing that is important in the ANC, of course, is to get the different structures of the ANC in line. So the biggest challenge here, and that's my question, the biggest challenge here is it not time for Ramaphosa, as the president, to take COSATU to his beautiful game lodge, lock the gates, go into discussion for a day or two, and get them to see where we are? Because unless we get the buy-in of COSATU and especially SACP, this document is going nowhere.
Well, the important point here is that this Treasury document, as I like to put it, weaponizes the National Development Plan in a very tangible way. It's very candid, it's very frank. It's not only that our future is unsustainable, it's that it's uncertain. And that creates enormous difficulties when you're trying to create investor confidence, trying to get growth going, trying to create the jobs you want. Now, speaking as a humble economist, let me say immediately, of course, you need to show the necessary political leadership which will build the consensus, on the one hand, that you need to empower you to do some very tough and difficult things, and on the other hand, to ensure that whatever is decided is implemented. Now, I think those of us who have a long memory remember we have been here too many times before, and we're now starting to run out of time and money, hence this document. Hence the message of this document, that this is what we need to do. The economic earth for South Africa, like everyone else, is round and not flat. Let's accept it and manage it much more successfully than we've done up to now. But there is a sense of urgency.
Absolutely.
And that's very important. And I think it's also welcome that the ANC caucus has come out in support of
That
of
is
the
a
plan.
very important part of the process, that the
Indeed.
ANC caucus, in a day or so ago,
But nonetheless, Theo, you know that there is a tripart alliance. The other two members of the alliance have come out against this National Treasury document. This is not a time, I think we've got to build bridges, not dig ditches. That's what we've got to do now. And that applies to the nation, to those political partners who have to help make this happen, but also the business community has got to rally around and say to government, we need the necessary leadership and support to make these things happen. And I come back to the point that we need more action, more talk, and need less talk, so that there are tangible outcomes. We've been here too many times before, and we've paid a high price, because what in fact the Treasury document has confirmed is the amount of economic damage that has been done over the past decade.
Absolutely.
And hence their very realistic projections are that even if we do all the right things, they're only projecting a growth rate of something like 2.5%.
I saw that in the scenarios towards the
And
end.
indeed, perhaps 1 million jobs over the next 5 to 10 years. So that's the enormity of the challenge. And the more you say that it's long term, the more one says you must start now. You must begin to send out the message to the nation, to investors, to business, that we are turning this economy around. We have got a plan based on what we've discussed before, so there's nothing revolutionary there. We've just got to get on with it, and we've got to learn the lessons that in the past, when we've been here before, we have failed to build the necessary consensus, and we have in particular failed to implement what we've said. In other words, the message now is walk the talk, or we're going to stay in a low growth trap.
Two brief questions. I saw in going through the document an extensive, maybe 10 pages on agriculture, and I saw a few pages on water, the management of water, which was surprising to me. Is there a reason why those issues are incorporated into this document about economic transformation?
Well, just remember, it's around agriculture now that there's the trilemma. The trilemma of food security, of land reform, and investor confidence. So apart from the fact that agriculture is important in its own right for those reasons, you now want to also get closure and certainty around the debate of property rights and
Absolutely.
property wrongs. We're not there yet, but that's an important part of what we need to tell investors, to tell the nation, that we have now agreed on a land reform policy, and it will be implemented in a way that creates cooperation, compromise, and certainty as to where we stand on issues such as land reform and property rights. So
And
I'm
water?
not surprised that it has been accorded a high priority in the Treasury document.
And water management?
Well, isn't that the second big bottleneck after our electricity challenges?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the next biggest.
And it's infrastructure development.
Tremendously important, and one of the main messages of the National Treasury document, which merely reinforces what many others have said, that one of the greatest growth potentials lies in implementing what we've already committed ourselves on the infrastructural side. That gives you a formula for job-rich growth. And that's what we really need now. We need job-rich growth in a way that will send a much more positive message out to those people out there who are looking for jobs, looking for a better life, and who expect their standards of living to begin to rise instead of decline over the next few years.
Prof. Raymond Parsons, thank you very much. This was a brief look at the transformation document from National Treasury, the impact that it must have, the economic climate that we are in, the political climate. We referred to most of the issues. But I agree with you in summary that this is a very, very important T-junction in politics. And I hope that the ANC does not get bogged down again in decision-making paralysis, because that has been the issue in the past, and that the new president, 100 days into his own presidency, can have the tools to make this thing work.
What's important here for everyone, in government and in other stakeholders, is to show the necessary strong leadership that can turn this economy around and build confidence in our future at a much higher level.
Thank you very much.